This Week 9 edition of the Propcast on the Pregame Podcast Network is brought to you by Nick Fantasy because they have, once again, a great sign-up deal with the promo code SGPN. You can get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1K. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Start crushing college football and the NFL with Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by sportsgame.com, RATHMM. And welcome, everybody, to this live stream episode of the Propcast here for the pregame show, basically, for the Sunday games on November 3rd. I'm your host of this episode, Scott Reichel, joined by Lonte Smith. We ended up having Munaf, who was unavailable today, so I'm filling in for the second time this season. Lonte, we had a lot of fun with college football yesterday, and now we have the NFL. Overall, how you feeling so far, then now that we're at basically the halfway point of the season?
Pretty good, man. Actually, I've had a decent NFL season, not so much college. So I'm actually looking more forward to NFL than I am college. But overall, pretty good. Not the sexiest matchups here, but still
That's
NFL
fine.
football.
Money to be made.
Yeah, still definitely money to be made, especially what we're about to go through right now with the player prop. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't say it was a bad beat because the last pick ended up not really being close. But I tried to turn $50 into $13K, and I lost on the last pick. So
Damn.
that's how my my Saturday went. Shout out to the bonus though for the triple double. But unfortunately, I had Navy first half, and they got buried.
Man. Yeah,
So
Horvath didn't play. I don't think.
I don't really know what happened there. There were weather delays for like 4 hours. That didn't help either. But yeah, I was one pick away from winning a $13K, and that didn't
Quarterback
work out.
didn't play.
So.
That's probably what Horvath.
Well, Horvath did play. He was just terrible. Did? He was just terrible.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But either way, Navy got buried, and I picked up a loss there. So either way, point is definitely looking forward to the games here on Sunday for the NFL. Starting off with the first game on the slate, I'll go with whatever ESPN has in order. So you have the Cowboys against the Falcons. For this one, Falcons are favored by 3.5. The total's at 51.5. Main story for the injury is, of course, Parsons still out, but you have Ezekiel Elliott, who didn't travel with the team. Who's on the verge of retirement, and he had disciplinary actions. It's probably not a good sign. I do want to ask you for this matchup. I know the Cowboys can't stop anybody. We know Cousins has been great, but the Cowboys really can't stop the run. Are you just going to go with Atlanta's overall ground attack, or do you actually think Cousins might light it up in the passing game?
I would bet the Atlanta backs, but I don't know the snap share. You would think that Bijan would just be getting more of the touches, but Algiers still been getting a decent amount. So I'm staying away from the Atlanta side as a whole. I'm going to look at the Dallas side. I'm going to look at Dak over 265.5 passing yards. He's only over this 3 times this year, but I think it's a good spot here. They don't have a run game. You just mentioned the thing with Zeke. With a high total like this, I expect a lot more passing. Atlanta's 24th pass defense, DVOA, they're 30th in pressure rate, so he should have some time to throw. And Dak has been pressured at the top 10 rate in the league so far, so he should see a sigh of relief here and be able to throw the ball. So I like him over that 265.5 passing yards. And I'm going to go with a running back, but I'm going to go with his receiving yards. Rico Dowdle, over 16.5 receiving yards. He missed last week due to an illness. He's over in 4 of his last 6. Dual threat backs have had success versus Atlanta. Kamara, Saquon, Kenneth Walker. Obviously, Dowdle's not on that type of level, but all of those guys had success out of the backfield. So I think Dowdle will be able to catch 3 or 4 balls for 25-ish yards. He's got 3+ receptions in 3 of his last 5 as well. So if you can't run the ball, you want to do a short pass to be an extension of the run game. So I like Rico Dowdle over 16.5 receiving yards as well.
Yeah, I like that too. We know that he's involved in the passing game, especially if the Cowboys are trailing because they can't stop anybody. So I think that he might get a bigger workload. No offense to Dalvin Cook, but he got elevated, so that doesn't exactly scare me in terms of snap count. I think for the props, actually, I am going to expect a pretty high scoring game in this one. So I might actually go with Younghoe Koo. I found a fun prop if you want to go for a team total without actually kind of laying as much of a number. You can get Younghoe Koo over 2.5 extra points at -129. The Falcons team total is around 27.5, so there's a decent chance they scored 4 touchdowns in this game. But Koo is one of the better kickers in the league. We know the Cowboys can't stop anybody. Instead of guessing who's going to score for this team involving the rushers or the actual receivers on this team, just give them to score touchdowns. I think Younghoe Koo should be able to attempt at least 3 extra points, maybe 4, and I see him making those. So any thoughts on that? Because I think that -129 is a pretty good deal for a dome game with a defense that's really, really underwhelming.
Yeah, I like that as well. I would look at his total points overall. That probably because that way you're getting the field goals as well.
Yeah, the problem is the field goals at 1.5 are juiced to -150. His kick points are at 8.5. So even with 3 extra points, you would still need 2 field goals.
Yeah.
Which is basically the team total. So that's kind of why I stay away from it.
Yeah.
I'd rather just go with the extra points.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah, I don't hate that at all. I mean, it's the year of the kicker.
Yeah, pretty much it is, especially in this matchup. That's the
Yeah,
matchup of the kicker because you got Koo
definitely,
against Aubrey for
definitely.
that one. I don't mind the longest field goal in that game, by the way, because
Yeah.
both kickers are absolute savages. Anyway, moving on to the next game, you have the Dolphins against the Bills. Bills are favored by 6, even though they beat this team every time they play. Totals at 49.5. For this one, of course, you have Josh Allen, who's been great so far this season. Main reason, besides the fact that they have been a bit more balanced offensively, he does not turn the ball over. I know he did last week in the pouring rain in Seattle, but Allen to not throw a pick's about minus 120. He's thrown 0 picks in every game besides 1 so far this season. The Dolphins are also really bad at forcing picks. They are currently allowing the 6th fewest, forcing the 6th fewest interceptions per game. I think Allen under half a pick makes a lot of sense. Buffalo's going to try to run the ball. They're physical, and they've done a good job of not giving Allen too much of a workload compared to previous years. That's my main prop. Give me Allen to not throw a pick at minus 120.
Yeah, same player, but I'm going under 244.5 passing yards.
Same argument.
He had 149 in a week 2 meeting, only 19 attempts. He's under in 5 of 8. QBs who's faced this Miami defense is under this specific total in 5 of 7. I mean, and that's because they could just run the ball. You could just literally just line up and run the ball against Miami. There's no need to throw the ball and put the ball in harm's way, which goes back to your point. He's not going to have a high volume of attempts, so the chances of him throwing an interception is a little bit smaller. So I like Josh Allen to kind of have a 16, 17 attempt game. I think he'll use his legs a decent amount. They use Cook, they use Davis, maybe some short passes. But outside of that, I think we see a run-first approach on this Miami defense. So I like Josh Allen under 244.5 passing yards.
Yeah, I do want to flip it, though, to the other quarterback. I do like Tua interception in this game at about minus 130 because he has been awful against the Bills. We have seen him get destroyed by this team. He has thrown at least 1 pick in 3 straight. He had 3 picks before he got injured. So he didn't even finish the entire game the first time they faced off against each other. But he has had at least 1 pick in 4 of the last 6 games. So he is a bit turnover prone when he faced off against this team. And I think minus 130 is affordable. We think Buffalo's going to win, so you're probably looking at him trailing and having to play catch up from behind. I think Tua might make at least 1 bad throw here. Don't mind the pick there at minus 130. Anything else you want to talk about for this game, or should we just move on?
No, we can move on. That's the only one I had.
Yep, cool. Moving on to the next game, you have the Raiders against the Bengals. We know Higgins is probably out, so expect a lot of workload for Chase. But you have the Bengals at minus 7.5. You have the over-under at around 45.5. Raiders, we know, not very good. They have been trying to run the ball despite not being able to. So expect to see 20-something carries for maybe 30 yards if they're lucky. Point is, though, the Raiders are a really bad team. I know Antonio Pierce was a fun story last year. Not sure he could actually coach. Separate story. A point is that the Bengals are still in desperation mode, especially in that division, because now the Browns are not totally awful. You're looking at the Steelers being good, and the Ravens, despite losing last week, are still a solid team. Bengals, though, 0-4 at home. So we'll see what happens in this game. But for props here, I'm assuming most people are on Chase. If you want to go for potential running backs, I know that Zach Moss is banged up, so people are kind of transitioning over to Chase Brown. Minshew interception is always the fun option because damn, he turns the ball over a lot. But I'll ask you, where do you want to go for this one?
Yeah, so 2 players, same team, and 2 different, I guess, bets. So I'm going to go Brock Bowers over 64.5 receiving yards. I'll pretty much ladder that up. I mean, tight ends have had extreme success versus Cincinnati. Even if you look at some of the guys who didn't have over this number, like Theo Johnson had 3 for 30, which was over his prop.
Kohler, that's like 80 yards for the average tight end.
Say it again.
That's like 80 yards for the average tight end.
Right. And then we got Kohler, who's the backup for
Andrews and Likely.
Andrews and Likely, yeah. He had 3 for 64 and a touchdown. In that same game, Andrews had 4 for 55. Zach Ertz 5 for 38, Hooper 31. Njoku had the big game, who's really the only tight end one outside of Andrews that they faced, 10 for 76 and a touchdown. So I think tight ends have had extreme success. Brock Bowers had 21 more. He's got 21 more catches than the next closest pass catcher. He's over in 3 of the last 4. All of those are obviously without Devontae Adams. I think Minshew is going to be finding him a ton. So I like him over. I'd ladder that up to, by 80 plus, 85-ish. Maybe I might go up to 100. It just depends. But and you talked about the run game. I'm going to go Alexander Madison under 55.5 rushing yards.
That's like better lose carries. I'll tell you that much. Because he can't run.
Yeah, that's like minus 115, minus 117. Yeah. Pierce actually says that he wants to get White more involved. So I expect the volume to be down a little bit on his rushing attempts. Now, pass catching, he's pretty good at. So I expect him to be still involved, but just in the pass catching game, like third down back. He's under in 3 of his last 4 with a 57% snap share, 2.7 yards per carry on 16.5 carries in that span. So not much going here. Cincinnati should be able to stifle the run. I would just expect them to kind of shut down any type of running aspect that the Raiders have going. So I like Madison under 55.5 passing yards. I mean, rushing yards.
Yeah, I do want to ask you, though, as a trivia question. Madison had 14 carries last week. Do you want to guess how many yards he had?
14 carries, 38.
The answer is 15.
Oh, damn. Oh, wow.
He had 15 yards on 14 carries. So, yeah, he should lose work to Zamir White. That's all I'll say about that. Minshew, though, interceptions minus 130. I actually am kind of feeling the interception props this week, but he's starting to pick in 5 of 7 games this season, and he has started to pick in every road game that he's played in. He is 4-0 to the interception prop, yes, in road games. So keep that in mind for Minshew, but I think he'll turn the ball over. Chase is so public, but I can't really disagree with it. But I feel like if you want to go for a sleeper option, I don't mind Gesicki. We saw Kelsey kill this defense last week. They're not exactly great against tight ends. I think Gesicki might have an opportunity, maybe a touchdown. I don't know if he's going to do the gritty in the end zone because that celebration's about 5 years old at this point, but I think Gesicki has a shot to maybe score a touchdown. And for him to score a touchdown this game, you can find a pretty good price. A touchdown for Gesicki in this game is plus 380 on FanDuel. Every other book has around like 3-1. 380, I think, is massive. The Raiders are really not good against tight ends, and I think that you might end up seeing, once again, Gesicki get loose. They gave up a touchdown to Kelsey. He hasn't scored a touchdown all year, so I think you're looking at Gesicki might have a shot there. I don't know if you agree with me, but plus 380 feels pretty massive for Gesicki.
Yeah, he had a good game last week as well. I think he had 70 yards on like 6 catches, 7 catches. So
he's getting involved and Higgins is out. So
yeah, exactly.
He has no touchdowns this year, though, which is a problem. But maybe he's overdue. But receiving yards 73 last week. His number's at 34.5. Yeah. That is really a low number.
Yeah, I would actually look at Eric All to get in the end zone. That should be probably a bigger price. I think if they get in the red zone, tight end, but they'll have a 2 tight end set.
Play action, random rollout.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with you, though. I think tight ends have been successful against the Raiders. They got one of the worst graded secondaries in the NFL. They play a ton of man-to-man.
So, they also sag off a bunch of receivers deep. So they give up a lot of underneath stuff, which should set up some tight end opportunities.
Tight end stuff, yep. I agree.
So either way, though, moving on to the next game, a match between the Chargers and the Browns. You have Jameis Winston, official starting quarterback now, against Justin Herbert. Now, Herbert has been good this season based on efficiency. For fantasy players, not so much. 8 touchdowns, 1 pick, 1,400-plus yards. Had a decent game on the ground, though, last week. For the Browns, we know that Jameis Winston is better than Deshaun Watson, bare minimum, as they beat the Ravens last week. We know the Chargers, though, are getting healthier at receiver. Chark's back. You have Quinn Johnson. Of course, you have McConkey, who had a great game last week. I do want to ask you, though, for this matchup, what do you like? Because the spread's actually pretty close, and you're expecting a bit of a close game for these 2 teams.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins under 66.5 rushing yards. Since the first 2 weeks where he had 130-plus, he's under in 4 of his last 5. Outside of a 39-yard run last week, this Cleveland defense held Derrick Henry to 10 for 34. The offense has been a little bit more pass-heavy. Herbert was under 28 attempts in his first 3 games. And he's 30-plus in his last 4. So it's kind of trending towards passing the ball a little bit more. The receivers are getting healthy. I think the rush defense for Cleveland is still one of the best in the NFL. I mean, 7 of the last 12 running back 1s or 2s are under 50 yards versus this Cleveland team. So I think J.K. Dobbins is in for a long day. I think Cleveland will be able to make them play from behind the chains, force Herbert to kind of pass. So if you want to parlay that into a Herbert over pass attempts or yardage, I think that might be the right way to go. On the other side, I think Moore is going to have a pretty good day. Dual threat backs have had success against the Chargers, but Cleveland doesn't really have a dual threat back. Nick Chubb is kind of a downhill runner. I think they'll use Moore in an extension of the run game. So I like him over 3.5 receptions. I would ladder that up. I think it's juiced like minus 135. So if you want to just buy 4 or 5, he's got 14 in his last 2 games. Chargers run a heavy, too high safety look. So a lot of checkdowns to Moore. I think he can have a big day, 7, 8 targets. He probably can get like 5 or 6 of those. So I like Moore over 3.5 receptions.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that Moore is going to be a solid pivot. I'm sure most people blindly picked up Tillman on their fantasy teams because he had an insane game last week. But as you said before, the main game plan for Harbaugh, don't give up the big play. And I do think that Tillman is in a spot to potentially fade, actually, at 48.5. So in addition to the Moore play, I actually like Tillman under 48.5 in a pretty good sell high spot. One of my favorite plays, though, in this game is actually Herbert rushing yards. It's at 9.5, which is very low. Now, I was on his unders a couple weeks ago because he was injured, but he had a lot of rushing yards last week. He had, in fact, a 38-yard run. So that was one run. He had 38 yards. He actually looks mobile again. He had 49 rushing yards, 9.5, not that many. Cleveland is currently allowing the 5th most rushing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks. And we know Herbert, when healthy, can move. They also have a good pass rush. So if he's running for his life against Myles Garrett, that might result in an extra carry for about 5 yards. But I like Herbert at 9.5 rushing yards. Give me the over on that one. Moving on to the next game. You have the Patriots against the Titans in the why bother ball for this one. The biggest winner for this game is going to be the loser because they get a better draft pick. But for this game, you have the Patriots, who are currently dogs on the road, +3, give or take. You have the over-under at around 38.5. Drake May is active despite having a concussion last week, so good for him. We'll see how much they, I'd say, ease him back into it or not. So first glance, I thought about maybe taking Stevenson carries in this game because I thought they might be trying to take it easy on May. The problem is the efficiency's been horrible for Stevenson. And the Titans are good against the pass, though, which might once again result in a decent amount of runs for Stevenson. For this matchup, I think I'm back to interceptions because Rudolph's been kind of a mess lately, and I think New England can pick him off a time or two. But for this matchup, I was looking at Stevenson carries in this matchup, maybe a Stevenson touchdown, but damn, I don't like many guys in this matchup because I don't trust anybody. I know Ridley had an incredible first quarter against the Lions last week, then did nothing for the rest of the game. Anything you really like here? Because Pollard's banged up. I can't really trust him either. I don't know what there is to like about these teams. I know Westbrook-Akina touchdown has been pretty good. That involves betting on a Titans player to score, which I can't do. So any thoughts on this one? Because if you wanted a flyer, I don't mind Patriots defense and special teams touchdown because damn, this Titans special teams is terrible. And they give up a bunch of big plays and a bunch of turnovers. So I didn't have any thoughts because I think both teams are terrible.
Yeah, disgusting game. I actually bet Tennessee, so I think I'm a disgusting person.
I like the punt. Give me the punt first drive each team.
Yeah,
like
or no touchdown in the first half if you can find that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, great.
But two of the players that I wanted to back, they're banged up. Drake May, I wanted to back him, and then Tony Pollard, I want to back his receiving yards, but I can't really trust it with them being banged up. So I'm a pass on everything here. Just this won't be on the screen. I can tell you that.
I mean, if you wanted to go for a potential like dark horse candidate for a touchdown play, Spears is out, Pollard's banged up. The arguable, I'd say, third string running back might be either Chestnut or Joshua Kelly. So if you have a book that offers one of those two guys for the first touchdown, you might want to have some fun with it. That's kind of my thought there, but that's something Kramer or Sean would give out on the show, which is like 150 to 1 that like randomly has a shot. Shout out to Corley, who fumbled at the 1 yard line.
Oh my God.
I know he was like 100 something to 1. But just a thought there, if you want to go for a potential depth running back, once again, Pollard is banged up. That is your option there. Probably Kelly. I got to see who's inactive for the Titans in that game, but Kelly has been a short yardage guy in the past for the Chargers, so maybe he's an option. But that's really all I like. Punt, plus 230. What's not to like? You get to fade Drake May, you get to fade Mason Rudolph for about 5 minutes, which sounds like a fun time. Moving on, though, to the next matchup here. You have the Commanders against the Giants. The first place Commanders at 6-2. Giants, we know, are a mess. 0-4 at home. They have scored 1 touchdown at home in the entire season. The Commanders, though, are laying 4 short spread there. It looks a bit trappy, and the over-under is around 44.5. Do want to ask you what you actually like in this game, because the Commanders' defense has quietly been pretty good the last couple weeks, and that was the main, I'd say, issue this team had for the first month or two. They've been good. Yes, I know they gave up the 2 drives to the Bears at the end. One of them was a fumble at the 1 yard line, but still, because shout out to the backup center, we got a carry for no reason. Point is, though, the Commanders have been good. The defense has been kind of underrated for the last couple of weeks. And we know Daniel Jones has been a lost cause behind that offensive line. I like the sacks. I think Daniel Jones is a candidate to die in every game because they can't block anybody. So I don't know what you like in this matchup. I know Tracy's been good. I've gotten burned by his receiving yards over the last couple of weeks because he doesn't get as much targets as he should. I do want to ask you, though, what exactly do you like in this game? Because Robinson is the short down or the short yardage guy, the safety valve, but they don't throw it to him that much anymore, apparently. Neighbors has been a non-factor for the last couple of weeks. And as for the Commanders, you have McLaurin, who's been good. Noah Brown, I might not mind in this matchup, but I got to ask what you like, because Robinson's been kind of banged up, and I see people pivoting more towards like Austin Eckler.
Yeah, I would look at Austin Eckler's receiving yards. The Giants, it's a couple things that the Giants struggle with year in and year out, regardless of who the coaching staff is. They struggle with tight ends. They struggle with backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield. Ertz had a pretty good day in the first game. That game probably should have had like 45, 50 points. A lot of the game in I think week 2 when they played each other.
Oh, okay, that game. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, the
they like
Commanders kicked 6 field goals or 7 field
yeah,
goals. So.
yeah, and so that game should have flew over. So I think you see a little bit more high scoring here. I mean, the one thing about the Giants is, regardless of offensive line play, they're going to have a good game plan. Dayball's going to scheme it up. I thought he had a really good scheme last week. Probably should have been a little bit more fortunate in that game. I mean, Pittsburgh scored one offensive touchdown. So they've been holding up. I mean, hopefully benching Deontay Banks is going to be pretty good, and we can see a lot more fight in the secondary. Deontay Banks is pretty terrible. So I'm going to go with Terry McLaurin under his receiving yards. I think he's going to see a ton of bracket looks. They're going to force other people to beat him, which is where I think Eckler can come in. So I got Eckler receiving yards over, Terry McLaurin receiving yards under.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I am actually looking at Jaden Daniels under half an interception. The Giants never picked the ball off.
Ever.
You know how many interceptions the Giants are forcing this season?
Let's see. If I had to guess, I would think 2.
It's a decimal, but I'm going to ask you.
Oh, wow. 0.15?
It is 0.1. That is correct. They are currently third fewest in the entire league. Daniels,
but they didn't want to pay. They didn't want to pay McKinney. He's picking off everything around.
To be fair, the team would suck anyway. Point is, though, Daniels, though, is a minus 128 for no pick. He has thrown 0 in 3 straight. I do expect the Commanders to go up. I think they're going to coast, but the Giants don't force anybody to actually throw picks. They've been pressuring the quarterback, but I think the Commanders will do a good job of actually getting the ball out quickly, and I think Daniels will make good decisions. So I don't mind the under, half a pick there at minus 128 as the play for me in this game. Besides that, nothing else. I don't really want to bother with this matchup. If you want to go for cyber field goals, I don't mind that either because he had 7 in the first meeting of the season, but I'm not going to bother. Just give me the Commanders to, once again, keep it easy with Daniels. Don't turn it over. Try to run the ball, and I think that they're going to try to keep him out of any type of duress as much as possible. Moving on, though, to the next game. By the way, the Steelers did only score 1 offensive touchdown because they had the punt return and they had a bunch of field goals. Moving on, though.
Yeah, so the defense has been fine.
Defense has been fine because they pressured the quarterback, but still. Yeah. Moving on to the next game. Going to look at a matchup between the Saints and the Panthers. We got Bryce Young behind center again, so if you want the interception prop, have fun. For this one, though, Saints are favored by about a touchdown and change. The actual total is 43.5. We have Derek Carr back behind center. How's he going to look? I have no idea. But for this matchup, give me Taysom Hill touchdown. I think Taysom Hill do a good job. The Panthers don't exactly stop the run well. We have Jamal Williams who's out, and he's the short yardage guy. I think it's a great spot for Taysom Hill, actually. Give me Taysom Hill touchdown at like plus 175.
Yeah, I'm going to go 2 wide receivers here. New Orleans is allowed the 5th most yards to wide receivers. Banged up is the Carolina receiving core. Obviously, they traded Deontay Johnson. Leggett is banged up. I'm not sure. I didn't see if
that trade, by the way. They traded away Deontay Johnson and move up basically like 2 picks in the draft. So shout out to them for that. One of the dumbest trades I've ever seen. All right,
so,
anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if Xavier Leggett's going to play. I know he's banged up on the injury report earlier in the week. So I like Coker over 34.5 receiving yards. That's at minus 15. He's over in 2 of 4. His snaps have increased each week, and now he's going to get 2, probably, well, I mean, for sure, 1 less receiver targets, and he's going to be getting Leggett's probably banged up a little bit, and he was in a slot taking over some of that. I'm
pretty sure Leggett's going to play, but he is banged up, so we'll see.
Yeah, so but Coker's been a go-to. Bryce Young targeted him a bunch. He was the first read on a bunch of his drop back passes. So I like Coker over 34.5 receiving yards. That's at minus 115. You shop around, you might find a little cheaper. On the other side, I'm going to go with Chris Olave over 67.5. I'll pretty much ladder him up. He only had 2 for 11 in the first meeting, but obviously that kind of got out of hand early with the Shaheed, I think, bomb. I think they scored like 20. I think they scored like 28 points within like 6-7 minutes. So
was there a pick 6 in there, or was it just an interception? Because I know Bryce Young just turned the ball over a bunch. I don't remember if there was a pick 6.
I think he turned the ball over twice on his first 2 passes.
They had a couple of short fields. We'll put it that way. So yeah.
And that got out of hand early. So, but I'm expecting him to have a big bounce back game with Carr in the center. Obviously, we don't know how Carr is going to look, but I can promise you he's going to look better than Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler. I can promise you that.
Yeah, Rattler shouldn't be in the league, but that's a separate story. Do you want to point out, though, I am going to go back to the extra point prop. It is the Gruby prop. 2.5 extra points. The over's minus 105. Against Carolina?
Yeah,
3 touchdowns?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll take that. I mean, you might get a pick 6 out of it, but I think the Saints are going to be in Carolina, so once again, they're going to be outdoors, but he has not been good lately. But they faced off against Kansas City. He had 1. That's a great defense. Denver's defense is solid, too. Chargers' defense is good, too. I think, once again, you're a spot where they might score 3+ touchdowns, so give me the extra points at 2.5. If he misses 1, then, you have a bad beat story to tell your friends. But I think that they should get the 3 touchdowns. So give me Gruby minus 105 for the extra points in that one. Moving on to the next game, you have the Broncos against the Ravens. Ravens are favored by a ton, arguably too much. The total's at 46.5. We know that the secondary is not any good. Humphrey's going to be on a pitch count, but he's back in the lineup. Bo Nix passing attempts is probably going to be a popular play. Same thing with passing yards. If you want to go for a receiver, you can go with those two. Yeah, anything else you like here? Because this could be a high-scoring game based on how little defense the Ravens actually play. I don't mind Bo Nix potentially throwing a pick in this game, but the point is expect a lot of pass attempts from the Broncos and expect the Ravens to probably run the ball effectively, because why would they not? But any thoughts on this matchup? Because Deontay's supposed to play about 15 snaps. Shouldn't be a big factor in this matchup. If you want to go back to maybe Zay Flowers, if you want to go for even like Andrews or maybe even Bateman, who has a pretty low number. You have any thoughts?
So I actually think that Baltimore is primed to like smash Denver here. It's a complete step up in class. The schedule of defenses that they faced has been really good. I mean, the schedule, period. I mean, they faced New Orleans without a bunch of their guys. Carolina, which we just talked about, is a shell of themselves. The Raiders, who
they're not a shell, they're just a broken team,
right? And the Raiders, who are whatever, and then the Chargers, and they were banged up when they faced the Chargers. So I mean, I think the way to beat Baltimore is throwing the ball. The quarterbacks have had extreme success against them, but I don't think Bo Nix can be able to do that on the road against they're getting a healthier defense. A rookie quarterback on the road, a hostile environment. I like Bo Nix under 220 passing yards. Only over once in that span of the week sequence of defenses.
He was very good last week, and that's because the Panthers are terrible, and they're actually down early in that game, so they had to kind of come back a bit. But
and he's under in all four road games this year. So I think Baltimore's defense kind of steps up a little bit with it's a limited. I mean, they don't want Bo Nix taking risks, so I think he's going to be limited. Maybe a lot of attempts, but a little bit of yards. I could see him going, for like 32 attempts and then having like 205 passing yards. So I'm going to Bo Nix under 220 passing yards.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to stay with the pass attempts because that secondary does scare me, but he's at 33.5. If you are picking Baltimore to win this game, they're going to be trailing. Like I do think that Bo Nix is going to have to throw a lot of passes here. He had 37 last game. Yes, that was the only time he went over this season. I should say for the last 5. He did go over in the first 3 games of the season, but a common theme, those games got a bit out of reach. If you think Baltimore is going to be winning, and you're looking at the script to come back, then of course it does involve Nix to throw some passes. So I don't mind Nix over pass attempts in that game at around 31.5. Or I should say 30. Is it 31.5 or 33.5? Let me just see. You can find 32.5 actually at Bet365. I don't mind that at minus 120. Moving on, though, to the next game, you have the Jaguars against the Eagles in another game where you have to assume one team's going to blow the other team out. Eagles are minus 7.5. Jaguars, we know, are 0-4 on the road. They are horrible in general, and the over-under is around 45.5. Eagles, though, post-bye, been running the ball a lot more. They've been willing to drain clock, and they keep vulturing every single one of Saquon's touchdowns by giving it to Hurts on a QB sneak. So for this matchup, we know that Lawrence and this offense and Peterson should have been fired already. We'll see what happens. Point is, the Eagles should win this game. Jaguar secondary is a mess. Problem is, when the Eagles go up, they tend to run the ball, and they try to not give Hurts too much responsibility, and they try to get out of Dodge with an easy win. For this game, though, I got to go A.J. Brown. I don't know who's going to match up with this guy. I think that Brown's at around 79.5 yards. Give me the over. I see him going for potentially 100. Don't mind a touchdown in there, too. I think maybe longest completion for Jalen Hurts makes sense because you could also throw in Devontae if you want to throw in any of the other guys they have on this team. But the Jaguars secondary is an auto fade, and I'll keep fading them. So just give me Jalen Hurts to potentially have a solid completion for 40-plus yards. Don't mind the highest completion there. Longest, give me the over on Hurts. I like A.J. Brown, though. Touchdowns plus 120, sure, whatever. I think Brown has a solid game.
Yeah, I'll pivot to the other side. I like Devontae Smith over 56.5 receiving yards, minus 15, over in 5 of 6. I think he was hurt in the one game he didn't go over. That was against the Giants. I think he took a hit and kind of left the game because he only had like 1 reception on 1 target. Jacksonville last in pass defense, DVOA, and plays a ton of man coverage. Not what you want to play against this Philadelphia offense who, has the dual threat ability of Jalen Hurts. So, yeah, I can agree with you totally on A.J. Brown. I think that opened like 71 and got bit all the way up to where it is now. So that's pretty popular. But I think Smith has a pretty good day in the slot. Slot receivers have had decent success against Jacksonville. They were without their best corner in Tyson, but and I think he's back now. But I think he still struggles. I think people still struggle with Devontae Smith in the slot. So give me Devontae Smith over 56.5 receiving yards. Can you tell me if I looked earlier, is Thomas and Davis both a go? Are they both active?
Let me check. What was the last you heard about them?
I just heard that they were probable.
Let me check. I'm pretty sure they're both playing.
Yeah. So, but wide receiver ones have done pretty well against Philadelphia, 80+ yards.
Thomas practiced basically all week, so I'm assuming he's going to play. He was limited most of the week, but he should play.
Yeah, give me Thomas over his receiving yards. I think he'll be able to have a good day against the secondary. They'll be passing a lot. I think Jacksonville will be in a negative game script. I know the guys will probably want to get up for Peterson, but again, they're down a bunch of guys. I mean, Kirk is out. They got offensive line. They just traded away their left tackle. Like they're going through a lot of changes on that offense. But I expect a lot of drop back passing from Trevor Lawrence. So give me Brian Thomas over his receiving yards.
Yep. Moving on, though, to the next game we're going to talk about. You have a matchup between the Bears and the Cardinals. For this one, should be a fun game. We saw the Bears, of course, choke the game away last week. Shout out to Stevenson. Point is, though, the Bears are 0-3 on the road, and they're 4-0 at home. So there is a bit of a divide there. There was a London game thrown in there, but that technically counts as a home game, I guess. But either way, point is the Cardinals are 4-4. They've been fine. They're favored by 1.5, and the over-under is 44.5. For this game, we know that the Bears' offense was a mess for about 3.5 quarters, and they got it going a bit late. Eventually took the lead, of course, with the Roschon touchdown. Roschon touchdown's like plus 330. Sure. They can't run the ball in short yardage besides Roschon, so I don't mind him to score in this game. Don't mind Caleb Williams' rushing yards. He's been great running recently, and I think that line's too low. It's in the 20s, which I think is too low. So I like the Caleb Williams over his rushing yards. Don't mind Kyler potentially have a game on the ground as well. Before this matchup, I think you're looking at what should be a pretty entertaining game. Yeah, the Cardinals give up a lot of passing yards. I think DJ Moore gets going. That's basically what I got for this. You have any thoughts?
Yeah, so we'll go with two rookies in two different directions. Go Roma Dunze over 34.5 receiving yards. Okay. He's over in his last 6 targets in 2 of his last 3 games. I think the slot receivers have had success against Arizona. You mentioned their pass defense, their bottom 5 in pass rush win rate. So I think Caleb Williams, who's been running for his life all season, is going to have a little bit of time to throw the ball. And I think he'll be able to find a Dunze on the contested catches. Obviously, one of the better rookie contested catchers in the league. So I'm going to go with Roma Dunze over 34.5 receiving yards. We're going to flip to the opposite side. Marvin Harrison Jr. under 54 receiving yards. He's going to see a lot of Jalen Johnson, who's an elite corner. He's had pretty good success against all of the top receivers that he's faced. Marvin Harrison Jr. is under in 4 of his last 5. He was 4 straight unders before last week's big game, and I think that was his best, most complete game. He just had that one good quarter. Where he had 111 yards in the first quarter, 2 touchdowns. Outside of that, he was going pretty poorly. I think he's going to get a motivated Chicago defense, especially in the secondary after what happened. And Jalen Johnson, I mean, you don't need much motivation for him. He's pretty much a shutdown corner regardless. So I like Marvin Harrison Jr. under 54 receiving yards.
All right, moving on to the next game. Going to look at a matchup between the Lions and the Packers. For this game, should be bad weather, and Jordan Love's expected to play. Same with Jacobs. Both are banged up, though, but they should both be active. Now, for this matchup, we know the Lions offensively scored 50-plus points in 3 quarters last week. Goff barely throws any completion. Point is, though, Montgomery had a touchdown pass last week, which is kind of fun. For this game, though, you're looking at the Lions being favored by 2.5. The over-under, I said before, is around 47.5. For this game, I see a bunch of points. I don't trust either defense to get many stops in this game. I think that you're looking at, assuming Love's healthy, expecting to throw the rock a lot in this game. I don't mind potentially Romeo Doubs, whose line's in the 40s. He's been pretty active with this team, and I do think that his yards are too low. So I like his over. He's been consistent. I think if we're looking at some other options, maybe if you do think that Jacobs is banged up, you want to pivot to Wilson, maybe, or the backup running back. But for the most part, Montgomery touchdown anytime is minus 120, and I don't know why. It was minus 105 earlier this week. He scores basically every week. He had 4 touchdowns last year against the Packers. So give me Sonic and Knuckles to have a solid game. But I do think that Laporta could have a solid game as well. I don't mind Laporta potentially to score a touchdown.
Yeah, so I like Jahmyr Gibbs over 91.5 rush receiving yards. He has been really out-snapping Montgomery pretty significantly, actually, over the last 2 weeks.
Montgomery gets all the short yardage stuff, though, at the goal line, so that's why I like the touchdown.
Yeah, Gibbs is averaging 146.3 rush receiving yards in that 2-game span. He's over in 4 of 7. I think he landed 91 in one of the misses, so just missed 5 of 7. Green Bay rush defense is pretty weak. They've allowed a 90-plus yard rusher in 4 of their 7 games. Bigsby had 78 last week, so I think Gibbs could be able to get loose on the ground. And of course, he's one of the more dangerous dual threat backs in the league. So the receiving yards, I think, will be there. So I like him to have a solid day, over 91.5 rush receiving yards.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be with you there. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else I'm really interested in, and I feel like we kind of covered it because both teams have so many options. You can kind of divide it however you want to. But I think you're looking at Love interception. I mean, it's cashed every week, so if you want to go back to that, you can. The only issue is if he gets hurt, then you got some problems. But Jordan Love, just to look at his actual numbers here quickly. Sorry, his actual interception for this game probably heavily juiced. It is at minus 125, actually, which is very affordable because he's had a pick in every game. So, yeah, give me Jordan Love interception. I think that's a great deal. I am also considering maybe going with Jordan Love rushing yards. He's had -1 the last 2 weeks, don't get me wrong, but his rushing yards are at 4.5. And the
How much is he going to
do,
run with that groin, though?
I get it, but the lines do allow a decent amount of rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks. Like, I think there could be a situation where Love scrambles out of the pocket, maybe get some yards, but I get your point. It is 4.5, so I get that he is battling a bad groin, but maybe in a scramble, adrenaline's a hell of a drug. Maybe he just runs for 5 yards, but just a thought there. I thought that line was pretty low, but it's understandable based on his injury designation. Anyway, moving on, though, to the next matchup. You have the Rams against the Seahawks. Rams are also 0-4 on the road. They're 0-3, and the Seahawks are currently 4-4 overall, 2-3 at home. Rams, they're -1.5, and the over-under is 48.5. I don't think Geno Smith and the Seahawks look that good, and we know DK's banged up. So, yeah, after what I saw against the Bills last week, I'm good on them. Give me Cooper Kupp to have a solid game. We saw him quietly have a solid game last week, not in terms of yards, but he had a touchdown in there, and Puka's a bit banged up. I see Kupp having a solid game. Seahawks, though, really not that good at football. I know that people are kind of hyped on them because they start off the year decently, and they're 4-4. I really don't think they're that good. So I'll go with Cooper Kupp to have a solid game. I mean, Geno has 7 picks. He's been terrible lately. If you want to go for the pick there, I don't mind it too. But once again, I'm pretty high on the interception props this week. You have any other thoughts? Because when you're looking at Metcalf being banged up, you have Njigba, who's the obvious pivot. Lockett's done nothing. So Lockett, I can't take because he's not involved at all. I mean, Jake Bobo, I don't know who else you like on this team. If you want to make a case for maybe Charbonnet receiving yards, that's an option. But what do you like? Because Seahawks have been a mess offensively for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I didn't have anything in this game. I was trying to figure out. I mean, tight ends have had success versus Seattle, but I don't know if the Rams have a competent tight end. Parkinson was having decent games, but Kupp and Puka are back, so he was kind of 2 targets in the past 2 weeks. So yeah, I didn't want to go there. I guess I maybe could look at Kenneth Walker receiving yards. I mean, they've been using the running back out of the backfield. Grubb has been using the running back out of the backfield at a high rate. So maybe if you want to look there, but nothing strong. I didn't have anything strong enough to make a bet. So I don't want to give out anything if I didn't bet on it. So yeah, I didn't have anything for this game.
Yeah, moving on though to the next matchup. For this one, gonna look at the Sunday night game. Do you want to cover it or you want to?
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Okay, cool. So we have the Colts and the Vikings. For this one, Vikings are 5.5. The over/under is 46.5. Game's in a dome, and the most important thing, Flacco is at quarterback, so you could actually back Colts receivers again. For this matchup, though, thank God I don't have to watch Richardson play again. Point is, though, for this game, you got Flacco, obviously. His passing touchdowns are 1.5 plus 130. Vikings' pass defense has been getting shredded lately. I saw Stafford kill them on Thursday Night Football last week. For this game, though, I see a lot of points. I think that Darnold's going to have a solid game. Don't mind his pass attempts under at 31.5. 7-0 to the under this season. So even though Darnold's been good, they've been trying to keep it balanced. And I think that Darnold's pass attempts are too high. I like the, once again, under on that. Flacco, I like his yards. I don't mind his touchdowns. I like Downs to have a solid game, who's been one of Flacco's favorite receivers when he took over the starting job a couple weeks ago. Or I should say when he played a couple weeks ago, and then he took over the starting job now. So I like Downs in this game quite a bit, and I might be using him in fantasy. So we'll see how that goes. But I think for this matchup, give me points. I see a pretty entertaining game. But Darnold, under 31.5 pass attempts, by the way, is even money. 7-0 to the under. Yeah, that sounds good to me. You have anything you like for this matchup? Because I think we're all just picking a lot of overall big plays.
I like 2 receivers. So I like Jordan Addison over 40.5 receiving yards. Is at -117. Indy struggles against slot wide receivers. He's been a bit up and down over the last 4 weeks. I don't know if he's
he have demanded a trade on Instagram, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so I wanted to see how that looks, but I think he'll be able to have a good day here. Darnold been pretty lackluster over the last few weeks, and I think that has a lot to do with it. So I think he'll be able to get involved early and often. Indy's secondary is atrocious. But on the other side, Minnesota has allowed a 100-yard wide receiver in 4 straight games in 5 of the last 7 or 5 of their 7 games.
You going
One of
Pittman
the
or
2
you going Downs?
Say it again.
You going Pittman or you going Downs?
Pittman. I'm on Pittman over 52.5. He's been banged up over the last few weeks, so I think he's going to get healthy here. It was reported that a lot of the players actually wanted Richardson bench, which is why
he better bench him. He can't throw the damn ball.
Right.
And he also took himself out of the game on like a goal line situation, which is insane to me. But thank God.
Yeah, I just think the floor rises with Flacco here for Pittman. Good matchup against the secondary, who's been pretty bad. They're going to blitz a lot. You know what Flores is going to do. So I like Pittman over 52.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, don't mind that. I see Hurley's mentioning he likes Allie Cox, 25+ yards. Don't mind the touchdown for Allie Cox, who, of course, is the red zone jump ball type guy. I don't mind him there. Shout out to the former basketball player.
DCU legend.
DCU. Of course. Point is, though, that's going to wrap it up for the actual game breakdowns for the Sunday card. If you want the Monday night episode, check that out later with Munaf. But for the sake of the touchdown parlay, do want to ask you what you like for touchdowns, because my touchdown pick is going to be Taysom Hill at plus 170.
You like Taysom Hill?
I do. I think it's a great price against Carolina. They can stop the run. Jamal Williams is injured. Hill had a couple touchdowns a couple weeks ago against Atlanta. I think it's a good spot. They don't have a red zone, of course, back, and with Carr being injured, I don't see many QB sneaks that are going to be coming his way. So I think Taysom Hill will take at least one red zone shotgun carry, and that's good enough for me. Give me Taysom Hill at plus 175.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with let's go with Tyrone Tracy for the Giants. I guess that's a little bit of my homerism. Yeah, let's go with Tyrone Tracy for the Giants.
I mean, they use him a lot. They don't really trust anybody else.
Yeah, and you went Taysom Hill, so let's get a receiver in there. Which receiver do you like?
I got to think of who I want to actually go with for a receiver.
You like A.J. Brown, right? You want to go A.J. Brown?
I mean, I do, but I thought we were going for something a bit bigger than that, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
okay. What about Jacoby Myers?
It's so popular now. I feel like everybody's on Myers.
Yeah.
Doesn't it feel like everybody's on Myers?
Yeah, I mean,
it kind of feels that way.
Yeah, I guess so. What about, let's see. Let's go to
I mean, Montgomery's an obvious choice, but like I'm not gonna. He's minus 120, but of course, like you have to feel that way. Same thing with Chase. That price feels a bit low. You know what? Yeah, I'll go for it because it's plus money. Cooper Kupp's plus 130.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Plus 130? Really? You had a touchdown last week. Yeah, give me Kupp at plus money.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you.
I just think that price is insane, especially with Puka being banged up. So give me Kupp. They get a touchdown there at plus 130. Anyway. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. A reminder that Munaf will be back for the next episode, the Monday night episode, which should be coming out if I had to guess tonight. Besides that, though, Lonte, anything else you want to add?
That's it, man. Best of luck to everybody. Appreciate you filling in for Munaf, man. I think Munaf might have had a bad week and he wanted to take the day off. What a loser.
Yeah. Well, either way, hopefully he's going to be back for the show later today. Point is, though, if you do want to try it on Underdog Fantasy, you can use the promo code MACHINE. A reminder as well, we have to do an underdog lineup. So what exactly do you like for your underdog picks in this one? We mentioned a lot of props. If you want to just recycle some of those, I feel like I got to go back to some interception props because I think it's fun to root for an interception, especially if you're a DGen. For this one, though, for interception props, I mean, Jordan Love is a good price, but I'll go with Minshew. I think Minshew I got to take. I mean, Minshew throwing an interception in every road game this season. Makes sense when you play in a dome, and now you're playing outdoors. They're going to be trailing. They can't run the ball. And I think that Minshew, once again, is a gunslinger, which is code word for I make really bad decisions on the field. So give me Minshew higher half an interception. You have a thought?
Yeah, I like Madison. I like Madison lower 55.5.
We had the same game. Okay, cool.
Yeah, rushing yards. And then I don't know if we can agree on one more to make it a 3.
Yeah, we'll go Montgomery higher half a touchdown.
Yeah, that's fine.
So that's fine. That's our 3-pick entry. Minshew higher half interception. Madison lower on his rushing yards. Could be 20. I'd still be tempted by the under or the lower. And then for the last one, you have the Montgomery touchdown over half a touchdown at once again as the final leg of the underdog entry. Anyway, till next time, follow me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on Twitter at XXLonteXX. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.